is unfamiliar to you, you must research it. Don't forget to investigate emergency services in the area. Your third step is to determine the date and time of your dive trip. You should be well rested and not have consumed alcohol within 12 hours of a planned dive. Your fourth step is to make travel arrangements. Your fifth step is to determine your equipment needs. Your sixth step is to determine whether you need to take a Naui worldwide refresher course before your trip. If you have not been diving in 6 months or more, a refresher course is a good idea. It is vital to prepare a to-do list for arranging your dive. Keep it handy so you can add to it as thoughts occur. Short-range planning starts about a week before your dive. You need to inventory your gear and inspect it to be sure it is in good condition and ready for use. Make any repairs that you are qualified to make. Avoid waiting to the last minute to buy items you need for your trip. Don't forget spare parts for your equipment. Have an extra mask strap or tank valve O-ring. As you pack your gear, check it against your list. 1 or 2 days before your trip, check the weather trends, water conditions, tides, and the long-range forecast. Always be sure to leave a copy of your plans with someone. Pack your gear in the reverse order of its use. Pack your gear in 2 bags, one for your dive gear and one for personal items. The acronym CBAG is an easy way to remember the series of steps that you follow to plan a dive. Site survey. Before you even suit up, evaluate the conditions at the site to determine if they are acceptable for your planned activity. If the conditions are bad, travel to an alternate location or do not dive. Never be afraid to say that you do not feel good about diving in poor conditions. Once you decide you can dive, you must determine which buddy will be the leader of the team. This person is in charge of the decision-making during the dive. It's advisable that the person who is most familiar with the area should lead the first dive. Emergency plan. You must discuss contingency plans, emergency procedures, and accident management. Agree on what to do if one of you runs out of air. Agree on what to do if separated underwater. Agree on how to summon help if needed. Make sure you have information about local emergency contacts and that you know the location of the nearest working telephone. Activity. There are many things you can do while diving, but you should select only one activity as the purpose of any one planned dive. You and your buddy must agree on the activity and review the standard hand signals as well as any special signs. Decide on your depth and time limits according to your dive tables or dive computer. Decide at what point you will turn around and start toward your exit point. When you are planning the direction of your dive, be sure to consider an alternate route or an alternate exit point to be used if conditions change while you are on your dive. You must carry out the plan you have made for your dive. You must not abandon the dive plan midway through the dive. If something occurs that causes you to change, surface or exit long enough to make new plans. When you are prepared for a dive, many benefits result, and these results are worth the time you take to properly plan and prepare. After each dive, you should record information from your dive in your logbook. Record the number of your dive, date, water visibility, starting air pressure, ending air pressure, and your deepest depth. Get in the good habit of recording the information at the end of each diving day or after each dive while the information is fresh in your mind. Chapter 7. Problem Solving. There are 3 steps to solving a problem underwater. Stop your activity, get firm control of yourself, and analyze the situation and take action based on your analysis. When you are immersed in water without proper thermal protection, heat is rapidly drawn from your body. You also lose heat underwater every time you take a breath and exhale. The deeper you dive, the colder the water. Also, the greater the pressure that works to compress your wetsuit, giving you less insulation. If your body loses enough heat, you can develop hypothermia. Symptoms of heat loss include loss of muscle strength, muscle cramps, numbness in your arms and legs, or inability to use your fingers or hands, increased breathing with no increase in activity, shivering, fatigue, and the loss of ability to think clearly. If you ignore the symptoms, your body continues to lose heat. You will develop a serious medical emergency. Your best defense in cold water is to wear the right amount of insulation for your needs. If you get cold while diving, you need to wear more insulation. Shivering indicates chilling. You must take shivering as a signal to end your diving activities. If you become cold while diving, end your dive and get out of the water. Get into warm, dry clothes as soon as possible and warm yourself. Problems with overheating usually occur on the surface as you are preparing to dive, but can occur while diving in warmer waters. If you overheat and do not act to cool your body, you'll experience some or all of the following: pale, clammy skin, a feeling of weakness and fatigue, headache and nausea, and possibly vomiting. You need to take action immediately to lower your body temperature. If you are not nauseous, you can drink cool water to rehydrate. Be sure to stay out of the sun and rest until the symptoms go away. To prevent overheating, pace yourself when donning your wetsuit, and be sure to stay out of the sun. Cold, exertion, incorrect kicking with fins, restricted circulation, or some combination of these factors can lead to cramps. If you experience a cramp, stretch the cramped muscle and massage it. For cramps in your calf or foot, pull on the tip of your fin gently as you straighten your leg. This stretches the muscles that are responsible for the cramp. Entanglements typically occur with underwater plants, fishing line, or fish nets. You should have a knife available so you can cut yourself free. Stop your activity and get control. Determine where you were caught and what object caught you. Remain calm. Avoid turning around because this will usually make an entanglement worse. You might be able to free yourself by pulling the plant, line, or net clear of you and your gear, or getting your buddy to help you. Disorientation, not knowing where you are or which way is up, can occur for several reasons when you dive. Sensory deprivation can occur during poor visibility or night diving. Sensory deprivation can cause dizziness or vertigo. Ear problems, a ruptured eardrum, or trouble equalizing when you descend or ascend can also cause vertigo. To help overcome disorientation, you must overcome the dizziness and then determine which way is up. Hold on to a solid object or hug yourself until dizziness passes. Do not close your eyes. To know which way is up, look at your bubbles. Air always rises. Equipment difficulties include gear that is or becomes improperly adjusted, undone, or lost while diving. You can adjust almost every piece of equipment while in the water if you first think about what you need to do, then work slowly and deliberately to make the adjustment. If you become excited and find yourself working hard, stop your activity, recover, think, and start again slowly. You could lose your mask, snorkel, fins, or weight belt underwater. You must be able to recover the lost item or be able to reach the surface and exit the water without missing them. Occasionally, the power inflator mechanism on your BC can stick in the open position, which causes the BC to inflate. If this happens, you must vent the excess air and disconnect the power inflator hose. If you do not, you can experience an uncontrolled ascent. If you feel nauseous while on the boat, do the following to help prevent seasickness. Avoid greasy foods. Stay out of any enclosed space on the boat. Settle yourself in the boat's midpoint where it is most stable and look at the horizon. As a diver, you have two responsibilities to your buddy. First, you must help to keep problems from occurring. Second, you must help your buddy overcome any problems that do occur. Most diving problems occur at the surface rather than underwater. If your buddy is in distress at the surface, help your buddy establish buoyancy. Get your buddy to relax, breathe deeply, and rest, and provide assistance as needed. If you must help your buddy through the water, you can use various swimming assists and tows, including the do-si-do position, the bicep push, or the fin push. As a diver, you must know the fundamentals of making a full rescue, even though it is unlikely. If you need to rescue someone, you will know how to proceed. Further training in diver rescue techniques is available in the Naui Scuba Rescue Diver course. This training is recommended for every diver. A diving emergency occurs when a diver is unconscious or otherwise helpless and possibly not breathing. For a rescue at the surface, establish positive buoyancy for yourself. Make contact with the victim to see if they are unconscious. Pull the victim to a face-up position and establish buoyancy for the victim. Yell and signal for help. Remove your mask. Look, listen, and feel to see if the victim is breathing. Start artificial respiration if the victim is not breathing and the shore or boat is more than about 50 meters or 50 yards away. Continue rescue breathing as you transport the victim to your exit point. If you find an apparently unconscious victim underwater, your primary concern is to get them to the surface. Make contact with the victim to see whether they are unconscious. Pull the victim to a face-up position and check their mask. You may need to ditch the victim's weight belt to make him buoyant. If there is any water in the mask and the diver is not breathing, remove the mask so air increasing in volume from decreased pressure will not force water down the victim's windpipe. If the diver is breathing, hold the regulator in their mouth. If the diver is not breathing, leave the regulator alone. While ascending with the victim, control your ascent to the surface by venting air from the victim's BC. However, if they start to rise too quickly and you cannot control their ascent, let go and control your ascent to the surface. You cannot allow them to make you a second victim. If need be, establish buoyancy for the victim at the surface. Signal for help. Place the victim in a do-si-do transport position. Look, listen, and feel to see if the victim is breathing. Start artificial respiration if the victim is not breathing and the shore or boat is more than about 50 meters or 50 yards away. Continue rescue breathing as you transport the victim to your exit point. When giving in-water artificial respiration, take care to prevent water from entering the victim's mouth and being blown into the lungs. Unless the distance is short, maintain rescue breathing as you transport the victim. It's most important to get them to the exit point where full CPR can begin. You must be prepared to cope with injuries ranging from cuts and bruises to wounds from aquatic animals to respiratory and cardiac arrest. You might be the only person available to offer immediate assistance. To prepare yourself to handle emergencies, you need training, emergency equipment, emergency contact information, and plans, and the determination to act. The first rule of first aid is to do no harm. The best way to follow this rule is to keep your training in first aid CPR and diving rescue techniques current. Emergency equipment can be extensive. At a minimum, you should have a first aid kit. Other useful equipment include an oxygen unit, a cloth or space blanket, and a supply of fresh water. First aid includes surveying the accident scene to determine if it's safe to render aid, a quick examination of the victim to determine the seriousness of the injury, immediate treatment for life-threatening emergencies such as stopping of breathing or arterial bleeding, treatment for less serious injuries and shock, and the arrangements for medical care and transport. There are 5 major categories of injuries for which you should be prepared to administer first aid: severe bleeding, respiratory failure, heart failure, shock, and serious accidents such as lung overexpansion injuries and DCS. First aid for air embolism and DCS includes lying the victim down and maintaining their respiration and circulation. You must also treat for shock, administer oxygen if available, constantly monitor the victim, and transport the victim to the nearest appropriate medical facility or operational recompression chamber. You should have training in first aid and artificial respiration. Everyone, diver or not, should be prepared to administer first aid and CPR. As a diver, you should also complete training in oxygen administration through a Naui instructor. Aggressive animal behavior underwater is rare. Any injury you might receive will almost always result from a defensive action on the part of the creature. Avoid potential problems by learning how to identify hazardous creatures and how to avoid them. Sea urchins, spiny fish, or stingrays can cause puncture wounds. If possible, remove any material in the wound. Toxins might have been injected and must be treated by soaking the wounded area in water as hot as the victim can tolerate for at least 20 minutes. Get the victim medical attention as soon as possible. Jellyfish or coral can cause stings. Remove the stinging materials and apply a neutralizing agent. Get the victim medical attention as soon as possible. Almost any aquatic animal can bite. First aid can range from simple antiseptic cleaning of the wound to control of serious bleeding. Medical attention is necessary if the wound is serious. Only dive when you are feeling well, mentally and physically. Annual physical examinations are important. Do not dive under the influence of drugs, including prior indulgence in alcohol. Keep yourself in good physical condition, know your limits, dive within them, and maintain a reserve of energy and air as margins of safety. If you grow cold, tired, ill, or low on air while diving, exit the water immediately. Safety occurs when a diver respects the environment and wants to be properly prepared for diving. Safety is an attitude, and this is reflected in the Naui motto, Dive Safety Through Education. Chapter 8, Diving Environment. Underwater conditions vary from one part of the world to another. Visibility, water temperature, waves, current, and other factors are different in each dive area. These differences influence the way you dress for a dive and the techniques you use. Divers will almost dive anywhere there is water, but they are frequently attracted to interesting underwater formations. The formation can be man-made, such as an artificial reef, oil rig, breakwater, jetty, or shipwreck. Natural dive sites include submarine canyons with sheer drop-offs, lakes, rivers, and coral and rock reefs. Any diving environment that does not allow direct access to the surface is called an overhead environment. Overhead environments include caves, the interior of wrecks, and waters beneath the ice or heavy kelp. Whenever you dive in a new area, you need an orientation to the dive site. You need to know what to look for and what to avoid, as well as the diving techniques that might be unique to that area. This can be learned by diving in new areas with a Naui instructor, Naui dive master, or experienced local divers. Always seek information about new dive sites from experienced divers. The bottom composition of a site also affects your diving. This is true whether you dive in a quarry, lake, river, or ocean. Usually you can expect the underwater terrain at the dive site to be an extension of the shoreline. If the shore is rocky and rugged, you will probably find similar underwater conditions. A wide, sandy beach usually indicates a vast expanse of sand offshore. There are exceptions, so it helps to check with other divers regarding an unfamiliar site. Water temperature and visibility are probably the two most important factors in determining the ease and comfort of your dive. Visibility can range from 0 to well over 30 meters or 100 feet. Diving in water where the visibility is severely restricted can be hazardous and requires special equipment, training, and procedures. The locale, seasons, weather, water movement, composition of the bottom, tidal changes, and other factors affect underwater visibility. Several problems relate to visibility. The most common is disorientation. With limited visibility, you can become disoriented and dizzy from the lack of visual references. You can avoid this by not diving in poor visibility until you've been trained in the proper techniques. Entanglement in fishing line and other debris can also be a problem in low visibility conditions. There are special techniques for diving in limited visibility. Divers can hold hands to stay together or use a buddy line. A buddy line is a short length of rope up to 2 meters or 6 feet in length with a loop at each end. Each diver in the buddy team holds one end of the line to maintain contact. In poor visibility, it is easy to become separated and lose track of one another. If you are unable to find your buddy within 1 minute under these conditions, you must surface using the standard technique to search for a lost buddy. Water temperature can range from freezing to over 30 degrees centigrade or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Diving in water colder than about 26 degrees centigrade or 79 degrees Fahrenheit normally requires that you wear some type of diving suit. As a rule, the colder the water, the more insulation you will need to wear. A phenomenon known as a thermocline will appear in the summertime. This is a thin zone of radical change in water temperature between the surface and bottom layers. The two layers can vary by as much as 10 degrees centigrade or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. As wind blows across the water, it transfers its energy to the water. The water starts to push into peaks and valleys to become waves. In the open ocean, these waves are called swells. As waves enter shallow water and are affected by the bottom, they break and form surf. The surf zone is the area where waves are breaking as the water gets shallower closer to shore. In coastal areas where beach diving is popular, divers must go through the surf zone to enter the water. Surge is the underwater movement of water you will experience while diving in areas close to shore with wave action. Tides cause water movement in many areas. Tides are caused by the gravitational attraction between the Earth, Moon, and the Sun. The change in the water level at the dive site due to the tide can cause problems while you're on your dive and do not plan for it. For example, when the tide is in or high, the water extends further onto the beach, covering rocks that are just outside the waves. This makes it easier to enter the water because you can swim over the rocks. When the tide is out, these rocks are uncovered. If this happens while you are in the water, you'll be forced to climb over the rocks to get to the beach. You avoid this by timing your dive properly. Water movement because of tides can also affect underwater visibility. The best diving visibility is usually during high tide. A current is the movement of water in a particular direction. Currents are like rivers or streams within the ocean. Winds, tides, gravity, and the Earth's rotation cause currents. You must consider currents when you plan a dive because attempting to swim against a strong current can exhaust you quickly. Usually you begin your dive into the current no matter how slight it is. If your entry and exit point are the same, you can use the current to help you return to the exit point. If you're diving from an anchored boat, a trail line 30 meters or 100 feet long with a buoy at the end should be extended behind the boat. This way, if you end your dive down current from the boat, you can grab the line and pull yourself back to the boat. Currents can be separated into three categories: standing, tidal, and transitory. Transitory currents are currents that suddenly appear and disappear. A good example of a transitory current is a rip current caused by surf. If caught in a rip current, you can escape these currents by swimming across the rip current, usually parallel to shore. Once you are out of the current, you can turn toward the shore and swim in. When you take the Naui Advanced Scuba Diver course, you will learn how to use currents to make ocean diving easier and more exciting. The many different types of life in the underwater world make diving interesting. There are thousands of animals and plants to interest and amaze you. There is beauty and color that surpasses anything you can imagine. It is natural to be concerned about dangerous animals and plants. However, aggressive animal behavior is rare underwater. You might injure yourself by accidentally encountering an animal or disturbing it. Avoid potential problems by learning to identify them. Each region has its own hazardous animals. Identification and avoidance are your keys to safety. Most divers are concerned about encountering larger, more aggressive animals that can bite, such as sharks and killer whales. Seeing these animals while diving is rare. Barracuda are large, curious fish with a menacing appearance.